Hello and welcome to Transfermarkt TV. I'm Manuel, Veth, he's Stefan Bienkowski, and Stefan, today the big topic is the Premier League market value update. Why don't you talk us through that real quick?
Yeah, our colleague Daniel Bush also put it together with a lot of research and a lot of help from our staff. And it's the first kind of complete update we've done in quite some time. And there's some really interesting movers and groovers, if you will. If we start with the top 10 most valuable players, which of course is what everyone is here to know and read about. And if you look at them now, we obviously see that Erling Haaland is still, miles and miles and miles ahead with 180 million euros. He's the joint most valuable player in the world alongside Kylian Mbappe. Both those players actually didn't change value. We had the Ligue 1 update on Monday, and the Premier League one came out the very next day. Both players, no changes, still the most valuable players in the world. And if you disagree with that, let us know in the comments. I'd be intrigued to see what answers should come up there. But anyway, go back to the Premier League. Bukayo Saka keeps second place with 120 million euros. Phil Foden is joined by Rodri and Declan Rice. Both those players have gone up by 10 million euros to 110 million. Both absolutely incredibly important to Arsenal and Manchester City, and probably really embody this kind of title race, if we can call it that already at this stage of the season. Both very crucial, especially Rodri, who's obviously already missed a few games for Manchester City. Number 6, Moises Caicedo stays there, no change to him. Julian Alvarez moves up by 10 million euros, and he moves into the top 10. He's now joined with Caicedo and Odegaard, and that obviously reflects, how much he's kind of really grown into an important player at Manchester City, the speed with which he's taken to English football, and in many ways kind of compensated for some of the other forwards / playmakers in that team who've either been injured or out of form. And of course, rounding up the top 10, we then have Martin Odegaard at 90 million euros, Gabriel Martinelli, who was into the top 10 because he got up by 5 million euros to 85, and Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle was 85 million euros. And the interesting thing there is that if you look at that top 10, we have 4 Arsenal players, but only 3 Manchester City players. So I don't know if that tells us maybe which team's in the ascendancy, which team are perhaps beginning to plateau a bit. But we'll let our listeners and viewers make up their mind in the comments below and let us know what they think.
Well, the top 10 is always much beloved and always a big discussion point, another big discussion point every time we do one of these market value updates. And every area manager always gets flooded on social media afterwards with mostly complaints, some praises, but that's just part of the job, I guess. So let's talk about the biggest rises in market value, because that list is always a fascinating one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really interesting ones. Obviously, the Premier League's known for having ready-made stars, but also has a number of young players who are developing very quickly, very impressively. When we look at that top 10 of the biggest increases, we can see a number of impressive players. Some I've already actually mentioned. Julian Alvarez, of course, one of the biggest increases of that update. Rodri, Declan Rice, all there as well. But as we can see, there are a number of young players, a number of young English players actually who are doing remarkably well. Lewis Miley, who of course moved to Newcastle, he's up to 13 million euros. He's had a massive £10.5 million upgrade. Murillo, the young centre-back in Nottingham Forest, had a really impressive season, so he's gone up to 22. Cole Palmer, who left Manchester City, now at Chelsea, he's doing very well there. He's gone up by 13 million to 45. Levi Colwill, who's arguably been Chelsea's only real kind of ray of hope in that kind of misguided defence. Future England international, if not already. And I'd be very surprised if he doesn't feature very heavily at the Euros next year. So he's obviously gone up by 13 million to 55. But of all the players, Rico Lewis, the Manchester City right back, has gone up the most, and he's gone up by 18 million euros to 38 million, which is a really impressive achievement for a 19-year-old player who's done really well to break into Pep Guardiola's squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always find the players and the rise of market value is so interesting, like that top 10 list, right? And so for someone who likes youth football, looking for the next wunderkind, that is always a list I find hugely fascinating. Now, up next is the list that always makes the agents angry. resulted to more than one phone call for either one of us at least. And that's the players that got downgraded. Stefan, the arguments will come in the comment section. They will come to our WhatsApp messages. They will come all over social media. Who are the 10 players that received a lump of coal before Christmas?
Yeah, and it's definitely worth noting here that not all downgrades are because of players being playing poorly. Sometimes it's because of injury. More often not, simply because of age. Contract plays a small part in it, but not a huge part. But nevertheless, there are some names on this list which probably would surprise many Premier League fans. As we can see, Jadon Sancho, another downgrade. He consistently loses value, now worth just 25 million euros, which might be something of a steal come January for any kind of teams looking for a real fixer-upper at 23 years old. He's still got so much left to play. Really intrigued to see what his value will be like in 5 years' time. Wesley Fofana, Chelsea centre-back, obviously had injury concerns. Rafael Varane has gone down by 10 million euros. That's obviously a mixture of injury, but also the fact that Eric Ten Hag seems to be coming up with a different excuse every week not to play him. Thomas Partey similarly hasn't been getting as much game time. Casemiro is a mixture of age and a lack of game time. Kevin De Bruyne, of course, has been out for much of this season. Crucial player to Manchester City. And of course, still one of the best players in the Premier League, but at 32 years old, it's quite understandable why his values begin to tick down. Anthony, a player who continues to frustrate for Manchester United fans, I'm sure. And yeah, very much struggling to kind of justify the fee that was paid from the first place and the high market value that came with it. Mason Mount's another one. We're kind of noticing a trend here of Manchester United players. In fact, I think there were 15 in total, if my memory serves me right. They got downgraded. We'll have a video later this week discussing the overall squad market values, and that might be one that Manchester United fans may want to skip. And of course, at the top of the list is Sandro Tonali. And I don't think we really have to talk about that one, simply because everyone's well aware of the fact of why he's not playing football in the months to come. And that one's obviously pretty straightforward. But, as you can see, a list of a mixture of players who are injured, players who are struggling for form, and players who play for Manchester United.
Yeah, I really want to stress here before we wrap this up, Stefan, that a market value doesn't always determine whether a player is good or not. It just determines, what we think the player is worth if he gets moved on. So if you are looking at this and say, why is Kevin De Bruyne getting downgraded? Why is, a superstar who's still performing well getting downgraded? Often it's age, or often it's other factors that are not in the control of the player. And so I always want to stress, the top 10 most valuable players doesn't always correlate with the top 10 most impactful players in a league, whether it's the Premier League, the Bundesliga League, or Serie A, MLS. That is always something that I want to stress, because it's very, very important to note a market value does not always determine the worth of a player to the individual team. So, and if you're interested in the market values, and I always stress this as well, read the very bottom of every market value text that we do on Transfermarkt, because there's an explainer there with a link to a site that has all the important points of how we determine market values. So yes, please check that out. Stefan, I think that wraps it up pretty much. And unless you have any final little details to add.
No, just to say, obviously head to the Premier League page on Transfermarkt, head to our homepage where you'll be able to read extensively our Premier League update by Daniel, which explains a lot of these kind of changes. And as you said, there's also an explainer at the bottom of that article as well. Not to mention, we'll also have articles through the week on the club, specifically the top 6 sides. So if you're an Arsenal fan, Man City, Man United, Chelsea, etc., we will have specific articles and features out explaining all the changes in their squad. So definitely jump on Transfermarkt homepage, .co.uk.us.com. All 3 English domains will have that content on them all week long.
Tons of content. Check it out. We'll be back soon. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye.